Hello and welcome back. I'm Dr. Suzanne Van Hove, and let's get started with the generic information around service management. So this is part one of service management as a practice. We're going to be looking at the service life cycle. We're going to review that very quickly. We're going to review what's a process, what's a function. We're also going to review very generically the roles, the typical roles associated with process. I want to give you a heads up right now. These slides around the generic roles, the service owner, process manager, process practitioner, this is something that you should watch more than once. It is a typical question for the exam that you understand roles, and we'll be referring back to this quite often, so make sure that you have this information down solid. So let's just jump right in here. This should be old school. You should know this already, but we're going to review it just so that we have a good working point. You should be very familiar with the service life cycle, this hub and spoke diagram. At the center, we have ITIL as the core, immediately surrounded by service strategy. Wonderful class, by the way. Service strategy is looking at how IT will support, how our service provider will support the needs of the business. We develop new and changed services, making sure it matches with our portfolio. Give that information over to service design for the actual design activities, creation of the service design package, which is then transitioned to, funny enough, service transition, where we're going to build, test, and deploy that design, ensure it meets the requirements as stated, mitigate risk in all of our activities, and once we have it deployed, potentially provide early life support for the forward-facing piece of IT, service operation. Here's where we'll do general maintenance, making sure that services are being delivered as needed. Underpinning all of these life cycle phases is CSI, which is what this class is all about, ensuring that we're meeting the needs of the organization and providing improvements when and with business reason, value to the business, they can occur. I've given this website a couple of different times. I've talked about it. Here it is in print, www.itilofficialsite.com, itil-officialsite.com. Going out here, you can get a couple of things. One, the syllabus, if you don't like the one that you can download from this organization, which is the same thing, but you also can get the glossary, as well as more information around ITIL itself, the various white papers that are there. It's a good site to go and poke around and see what you can find. This next diagram, you'll have this in your enlarged slides area or as one of the handouts. It's a very high-level overview of the key aspects of each of the life cycle phases. I'm not going to read this to you or discuss it any further than it's a great study aid and a very quick reference for what's in what life cycle phase, as well as how everything runs through the SKMS, that gold box in the center, the Service Knowledge Management System. This next diagram, another good one in terms of defining how these life cycle phases interact. I like this one very much. It gives you some quick and dirty taglines for each of the life cycle phases. I wish we could do this in 3D, but of course that we can't, so it looks like a very flat file, and that each of the life cycle phases feeds directly into the next one in a very linear fashion. That could not be further from the truth, because who's to say service transition could not provide a change in strategy? And that's where you see these feedback loops always going back to the previous life cycle phases in this diagram. Great little diagram. Spend a few minutes with it. But again, and understand that it is never a linear process, that we must start with strategy before we can get to CSI. Because quite frankly, you know, it's a chicken and an egg question, isn't it? Isn't a change in strategy an improvement? Think about that. But again, it's a question that we'll answer in the next few lessons in this course. So let's get down to things that you should have remembered or learned in your foundation class. First one is, what is a service? Service is a means of delivering value to customers by facilitating outcomes customers want to achieve without the ownership of costs and risks. Longest definition that you'll see, but it is a very good one. Some key terms in here. One, of course, is value. We'll spend a little bit of time around value, and then also facilitating outcomes that customers want to achieve. Value, you should immediately have heard in the back of your mind. It's comprised of two components. I'm hoping utility and warranty came up. Utility, fit for purpose. Warranty, fit for use. If you're having trouble remembering what goes with what, just remember the U's do not go together. Utility would never, ever, so there's my absolute word, but this one's true. Utility would never be associated with fit for use. So the U's do not go together. Services facilitate outcomes by making sure that the tasks that are needed to perform that type of an activity, they're enhanced via technology or other means in support, or that we also reduce the effect of constraints. So you think about HIPAA or Sarbanes-Oxley or any other requirements, federal, statutory, regulatory, that may constrain. The service provider, IT in this case, is taking them on, saying, we're addressing them, we're going to take care of it, and user, all you have to do is do the work. We've addressed those constraints. Couple of different types of services. These again should be a review from your foundation side. We have core, enabling, and enhancing. Core service is what the customer is willing to purchase. Enabling is that service that allows that core functionality to be delivered. And enhancing are those excitement factors, or the things that entice people to buy or use that core service. So we talk a little bit more about value. We know it's utility and warranty. Utility is what the customer gets, meaning it's fit for purpose. So it increases the probability of achieving outcomes. Utility, very important. Warranty, on the other hand, is how it's delivered, whether or not it's fit for use. When something has a warranty, it kind of has a guarantee that that product or service will meet the requirements. So the warranty also will decrease the possible loss caused by variation, meaning we have a set of parameters that are going to be met, and then that will deliver as agreed. This is the diagram that you should be very familiar with. You see utility at the top. It is a Boolean or, meaning that we're going to support the performance or remove constraints. If we've done either, we've met the requirements, we have fit for purpose. The bottom section is a Boolean and we see that they have four different areas: availability, capacity, continuity, and security. Those are my warranty processes. We need to meet all four conditions for us to say that we have met fit for use. If we have fit for purpose and fit for use, we have created value for the organization. So then we talk about, we had service, we had value. What's service management? It's a set of specialized organizational capabilities to provide value to customers in the form of services. We do this through a series of capabilities and resources. Capabilities are the organization's ability to coordinate, control, and deploy resources to produce value. It tends to be the concepts around processes and functions, and they tend to be more intangible. It's our management style, how we've organized, the processes that we use, the people, the skills that that person has, and our knowledge. Well, we also need to understand that we have to have resources. Those resources are used to deliver the IT service. These are more tangible items. They're easier to acquire than capabilities because I personally can go out and purchase them. This is infrastructure, people, capital. I can borrow money, applications, information. Now, we've had people on both resources and capabilities. On the resource side, it's an FTE, a full-time employee or a part-time employee. It's the actual body. On the capability side, you hire a person because of their skill set. That would be a capability. The quote down at the bottom is very important. Capabilities require adequate and appropriate resources to produce value. Without capabilities and understanding how we use the resources, the organization is left with the collection of useless resources, which translates very quickly into waste. We must match what we have to what we need. Processes, one of those capabilities, right? A process is a set of structured activities designed to accomplish a specific objective. So we'll take one or more inputs, turn them into a defined output. I like this diagram very much because it really defines exactly what must happen. So we have a trigger that will start a process activity. Those process activities could be further defined into procedures or work instructions. A process will always be measured, so we'll have a set of metrics. There'll be a set of roles associated with that process, who does what, when, and also process improvements. Those core items right there in that middle red box is really saying this is what a process is. So how do we control it? Well, we need a process owner that will define the documentation. They'll write down how the process is to function. They'll deal with feedback. They'll develop a set of policies that will give us guidance and governance on how that process operates, as well as setting the specific objectives for that process. Underpinning the activities and the control are these things called process enablers. Again, we see the terms resources and capabilities. We could use resources and capabilities for this enabler bit. We need not only people or tangible items, the resources, but we also need the skill set. How do we organize? What do we do in order to enable that process? Resources and capabilities, we see them as service assets, as strategic assets. We're now seeing them as process enablers. Process characteristics, again, from your foundation class, should be measurable. It should have and provide specific results. So in other words, they should always be performance driven. We're looking at cost, quality, and other variables. Again, delivering a specific result that's been defined by that process owner. We should always have a set of customers, whether they're internal or external. That process has to meet that customer's requirements. And additionally, then a process should respond to a specific event. So its activities are traceable to a specific trigger that we know about, and that we have some sort of expectation for an outcome. So in other words, that trigger and that process could be iterative. For CSI, we have one process, and it's that 7-step improvement. We're going to be seeing this diagram multiple times, so I'm not going to spend time on it here. We're going to get into all the depth and detail as we move forward throughout these various lessons. But this should be something that you've seen in your foundation class, that 7-step process. We'll look at it again as we move forward. Functions, on the other hand, kind of like a support group for a process. It is a team or group of people that perform specialized types of work, and they're responsible for specific outcomes. They tend to be self-contained with their own resources and capabilities in terms of work methods, knowledge, experience. And there's a bit of coordination between the functions and those shared processes. So when we look at the 4 functions that we know of, again, if we need more information, service operation volume, service desk, technical management, application management, IT operations management, which has 2 sub-functions, facilities and ops control. So they do share information, but these are the folks that are really, kind of working to keep the lights on. And it's your typical traditional IT groups. Okay. Some of the generic roles, and this is the key aspect of this lesson, and making sure that we understand the requirements for the service owner, process manager, and process practitioner. So let's just jump right in here and look at the service owner. Service owner is accountable for the quality and the delivery of a service. This is an IT role. They're going to ensure that the service meets the business need, meets the customer requirements. They'll represent that service across the organization. They'll work with business relationship management to understand the requirements, making sure that we have good, consistent communication. They'll help create service models. They'll identify improvements. They really are about understanding what that service does and making sure that IT is supporting it in the best way possible. So in other words, keeping it to the forefront, and we have a single point of contact in the IT organization that is accountable for the delivery of that service. You can see on the last few bullet points that they're working with service level management, service portfolio, and service catalog management to make sure that we have the correct description and understanding of those requirements. The process owner, now we've got a service owner and a process owner. Process owner is accountable for that fit for purpose. So that's the utility side of that process. Fit for purpose is utility. And this is around the 26 different processes within ITIL itself. We could couple the process owner with the process manager, but there's a risk involved. And from your foundation class, you should have discussed that risk. Some of the activities, I'm just going to go through them relatively quickly. You can see them in the slide decks, but the process owner is about sponsoring, providing authority, designing and developing, ensuring that we have documentation, ensuring that we audit the process, that we improve it, that we have the appropriate policies. Also about communicating that process across the organization in terms of what does the process do, changes, making sure that it appropriately interfaces, that we have the appropriate funding and staffing and tools, making sure that the training takes place, and that we improve across as needed by the organization. Now, any improvements that are discussed, of course, will be implemented under the authority of change management, but through the support of that process owner. The process manager is that day-to-day. They're accountable for the operational management of a process. Make sure that you understand that you could have multiple process managers. Maybe you're a global organization and you need to have, say, for example, a change manager per location, per region, and then a global change manager. Perfectly acceptable. You would organize with the process owner in the planning and coordination of the activities. You'll make sure that the activities are performed. You'll produce the reports, making sure that we have the various roles managing the activities, coordinate with service owners so that we have good operations, monitor and report, identify and prioritize improvement opportunities, and then implement those improvements, of course, again, under the authority of change. Now, we said before that process manager could be coupled with the process owner. I'm hoping that you see that is a risk. Somebody who has the authority is now managing themselves, has the authority to actually do something. You could be authorizing yourself to do an activity, and that's usually not a good thing. Separation of duties is, but I also understand size of organizations. The last generic role is that process practitioner. And again, it says that we could combine the practitioner, the doing aspect, with the manager. Again, that same set of inherent risks. The practitioner is responsible for the various activities of a process. They would be performing one or more of the process activities. The key thing here is not the performing of the activity. Yes, that's important, but understand the reason why that activity is being performed in the first place and how it impacts the business. It's not just, I have to write an incident ticket. Oh boy, it's so boring. I don't have time, but there is value in it. So they have to really embrace the purpose and the intent of the activities. They need to work with stakeholders to ensure that the actions are effective and then that they follow the process activities, the inputs, the outputs, and the interfaces within their activities so that we do get what's expected from our process. We also need to have good documentation. We can't say on an incident ticket, it's fixed. That does nothing for us in the future. We need to understand that we need to document our actions so that we can review and replicate them if necessary. I encourage you to review these 4 roles multiple times so that you understand each's activities, and so that you can, when the time comes, say, that set of activities, it's really kind of describing a practitioner or a manager or the service owner, because you recognize the activities. Appreciate your time. We look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.